So, good evening, everyone. क्या हाल चाल है सबके? I hope everyone is safe, doing good in these tough times. I, Yash Tugar, founder and CEO of Krells Research and Educare. I welcome to you all to today's webinar once again. So, is my voice audible? Just a quick yes on the chat box so that I'm okay with it. Is my voice audible? Okay, I think it's perfect, sir. Perfect. Great. Okay. So as we start every webinar, we start with a learning which is there as a life as well as market learning. So today's learning is basically mostly based on the markets. That markets are supreme, markets are God. You should respect them and you should move ahead as per the market. मैं ये चीज learning इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ because I've heard a lot of people who have shorted the market maybe at lower levels, and maybe they are not ready to accept the market is rising from 7,500 to 11,500 continuously. Because see, we have to understand one thing कि market हमारे thought process से नहीं चलता है. Market is always forward looking. Market बहुत चीजों को के ऊपर चलता है, right? So we cannot disrespect the market. आपको market को respect करना ही पड़ेगा. Market में जो trend चल रहा है, जो भी आप analysis करते हो, चाहे trend follow करते हो, चाहे fundamentals करते हो, so you have to respect what the market is doing and you have to work accordingly. आप उसके against मत जाओ. lot of people think that नहीं, ये market इतना थोड़ा बढ़ गया और कितना बढ़ेगा, COVID times है, business is not going. Today's topic is very interesting, that economy is not going. Okay, so that is why we have to understand that you have to always believe that market is supreme, market is God. आपको उसी को follow करना है, उसी को respect करना है, and उसी के accordingly अपना चाहे portfolio बनाओ, चाहे trade करो. So you should follow that. That is very important. Okay, so that is the learning for today. Don't disrespect the market. Markets के theories को follow करो, जो we teach, follow that. And जो other speakers what we bring, you should always follow that. And of course with that you have to match up with the market psychologies. Okay, तो market आपको जो दिखा रहा है, जो screen पे चल रहा है, वही that is supreme, that is there. You cannot fight with it. Don't fight with it. Don't go against it. Follow the trend and you will always make money. Otherwise, if you go against the market, I've seen people they've almost 99% of the times they've lost money. Okay, so don't go try to go bet against the market. Follow the trend, follow the market. If you see any trend reversals, then only go against it. Okay, so that was the learning for today. As we always pledge, so I'll repeat that you will always respect the market and you will write I'll pledge. Okay, what the market shows you, you will see that only. So today we learn that the markets, whatever the market show us, we'll respect that and we'll work accordingly. Say I pledge if you agree with this. Okay, so I see a lot of I pledges. Perfect, great. Perfect. So now, without wasting much more time, it's high time we introduce our speaker. So today's speaker is Mr. Alok Agarwal. He does not need much introduction, but I'll just give a small one. That he's a CFA and he has been he's a senior fund manager in PGIM Mutual Fund, which is a very reputed mutual fund. And he has been he'll be sharing some great unique insights today, some great data sharing, some good insights on why the economy is not showing the true picture of the market. As I've had a lot of questions on these, so I thought there no better person I can call than Mr. Alok Agarwal, who is himself a fund manager and वो बहुत ही different तरीके से market को देखते हैं. Okay, so Alok sir, are you there? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Perfectly, sir. So welcome, a warm welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So it's our privilege. So sir, as we start every webinar, I would like you to share your journey about how you started in a very candid way, that how you started your journey in markets, then you did your CFA, and then you entered the mutual fund industry, and now you're a fund manager. So just take us through that journey, because a lot of people have that dream of becoming a fund manager one day, and I want you to inspire them by sharing your journey. so that people get inspired by you, and they also get that path for being a fund manager?
Sure, Yash. First of all, thank you for having me here, and good evening to all the viewers who have joined in. And thanks for taking the time out. You are asking me about my journey. Like most fund managers, at least from my side, my journey started with my education on the finance side, and my inclination was always more on the finance side. It's not that while studying I was thinking of becoming a fund manager, but it, incrementally when you started analyzing the balance sheets, annual reports, you were more and more intrigued by the balance sheets, and then what and how the businesses are moving, what makes a successful business, what doesn't make a successful business, what are the causes of failure, etc. So I did my CA in 2002, and I was more into the academics in those times. So I was not directly into the markets. So having classes for CA, CFA, and having authored a few books on financial management, and as well as having some equity advisory business too. So that was my start. But soon again, I realized that I wanted to be more into the full time of equity investments, and more than anything else, to prove to myself and to the world that if you do things scientifically correctly, it's very difficult to actually lose money in the markets. Markets actually make money for us over a period of time. All we need to do is take care of certain disciplines. And there are two ways to learn in the market. If you learn from the experience of others, it costs much less. If you learn at your own experience, it will be very, very costly. So please learn from everybody else's. There are so many stalwarts for decades and almost a century now. And it's not about intelligence in the market. So the greatest of scientists in the world have also lost money in the market. So it's all about disciplines to be followed. And hence my journey began when I shifted more from the full time from education and more into the market side. And starting from the research, going into the head of research, managing the PMS products, and then shifting to the MS space. And for the last 10 odd years, I've been with the Deutsche Group. And then when Deutsche was taken over by Prudential of US with the PGIM India Mutual Fund. So in all, about 18 odd years of market experience ever since I did my CA. And I must tell you, CA was done in 2002, but I would still say each day is a new experience. And I myself count upon it. Until you have learned something new in the last few months, you can't really set on stale information. Markets are always evolving, always dynamic. Every time it's a new phase. One needs to keep on learning and learning.
Okay, sir. Great. So that was some great insight sharing. Aapka journey, it has been it's like a dream journey. You started with the CA, then CFA, then you start with managing funds of PMS, and then you of course start. Now you're managing funds of a very reputed US mutual fund. So, sir, in your journey, like when you started, so what was your aspiration? Did you aspire that you will become a fund manager, or your aspiration कि नहीं मेरे को market में कुछ अच्छा करना है? But like of course that is one of my dreams, because being a fund manager is of course one of the dreams which everyone has. So, sir, did you aspire for that in your initial days? Because usually doing CA, CFA, and उसके बाद people usually aspire for a job in the audit department or maybe something like that. But you chose a different, which is a very less chosen path, but that's a great journey. So, sir, please share some insights on that.
Sure. Yes, Yash, I'll tell you, say if I go back to passing my class 12, at that time, since I was doing commerce, getting into CA was a very, very obvious choice, because under graduation, that's the main professional course you can undertake. Frankly, in the first year of CA, I didn't really understand what audit was. So those experiences were coming in. And as things progressed and as I reached towards the final and all, I started realizing that my preferences were more towards the finance than the audit function. So that clarity has started coming in well before my CA finals and all. And hence first I enrolled into the CFA India and then the CFA US, because I wanted to strengthen my information, my knowledge on the finance side. Thereafter, the education side somehow started on its own, and it kept on building up. And then I realized that once I made up my mind that I want to be more full-time into the equity side, the obvious choice was to move more into the fund management side, because obviously I had my own ways of thinking, of implementing things. A lot of that being a learning process from what most stalwarts have done correctly and incorrectly in the past. And the idea was that you do things scientifically. You may not win every race every day, but over a longer period of time, you look very successful.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Totally believe on that. So, sir, always I ask this question to most of the speakers because as we are there in markets, so markets में एक चीज तो हमेशा सबके साथ होनी है, that is some failure. Maybe in terms of trading, maybe in terms of investing, आपने कोई stock pick किया and it did not work that way which you thought. So, sir, please take us to that failures because वो भी जानना बहुत जरूरी है because people share their success stories of course, but I always ask the speakers to share some of the failures because a lot of people go through that and अभी जब बहुत जने गया भी they would have went through that. So I want you to tell them कि हाँ failures are there, वो होते रहेंगे, but you have to pick up from there and you can go to the path of success.
Yeah, you know, it's this way. The philosophy goes that in everybody's life there will be good days, there will be bad days, and things will not always be in your favor. So the true character actually comes out as to how you respond to the times when things are not in favor. So that's where the differences come in from a longer term journey. So there have been a lot of instances where I felt that I could have done things differently, especially in hindsight. So the best part is if you have made a mistake, take note of it, admit it, know it, but just ensure that you don't repeat it. So the types of mistakes that you can make will keep on reducing over time. So, you know, in 2008 also, I was there in the markets managing funds, you know, 2020 as well. There have been such steep falls. A lot of times I felt like, you know, had I taken a cash call, maybe things would have been better. But, you know, as a matter of my policy, I don't take cash calls. So there are instances and where there would be a lot of instances where certain stocks that we had didn't do well, we could have exited earlier. So it's always a learning process in the market. And a lot of times, you know, if something, I'll give a common example where most investors also get stuck and which was a learning phase for me also early on in the investing world. Something fell from 200 to 100, it looks attractive. You get into the stock, at 80, it looks even more attractive. At 70, even more attractive. 60, even more attractive. So if that's the mindset one is using, there's nothing wrong in it. But you need to be more and more confident about the company and your ability to hold and add. So people keep on averaging, keep on adding, but they should know how much, there's no guarantee as to when the things will turn around. So the idea of risk management came from the experiences of the earlier days that if and when one should average. And if you are averaging, to what extent are you going to hold? Because market will not turn just because you want them to turn. So they move as per their own. So there have been a lot of such instances. And then the ideas about not investing in companies where either the debt equity ratio is very high or capital efficiency is very low, or especially on the corporate governance side. So, you know, debt equity can be checked on the balance sheet on various softwares. You can easily go and check the ROEs as well, because these are objective numbers. But how do you check your ROE at the corporate governance issues? So when that is there, in such a case, one has to be extremely watchful. I'll give an example for that, and without naming too many companies there. But I must say at the outset, any company that I'm taking the name here, please do not take it as an advice. It's more to do with the experiences. So I remember way back in 2002, I was presenting a paper for the CA Institute, and a lot of CA members were there. Those days, consolidation of accounts was a very new topic in the CA world. And the question was, why is it required? You know, consolidation is such a cumbersome process, and simply parent companies can report numbers. Why do we require consolidation of accounts? And so far, till then, only parent companies were putting up numbers. The critical part of my presentation there was, you know, if a company has 4 or 5 different businesses, right? Suppose the parent company has a profit of 200 crores, but there are subsidiary companies which have a loss of 150 crores. So the combined profit should be 50 crore rupees. 200 crore profit of parent, 150 crore loss of the subsidiary. But the net profit should be 50 crores. Without consolidation, the companies were reporting 200 crore profit only because the rules at that time required only parent companies profit. So few companies were there, which what happened was that they took up this loophole, and whatever was their loss-making verticals, they used to put it into a subsidiary. So the parent companies were always inflated, and hence the market cap reacted accordingly. So this is something which is not the right intention of the management to show the true picture to the shareholders, and such things, for my sake, would qualify as corporate misgovernance because it is not really in the right interest of the minority shareholders. And such things, with your reading, your understanding will come in. You don't need any specialized information for that. It is just an eye for detail. Read for more for your companies that you own in your portfolio. There are enough and sufficient materials available on the official public domain, which corroborates what the management is doing and whether the management what they're doing is in the best interest of the shareholders or not. That IT company was there, which did it in 2002 and had quite a poor failure towards the end of 2008. So towards the end of 2008, people started asking why is it failing, whereas the seeds were quite visible in 2002 itself. So a lot of such things are there. So for somebody like me, what happens is you may not invest in such a company, but you also lose out on the green patch of those companies during the years till which it has not really collapsed. So that's a balance that one needs to strike. But I would say please pay due attention on what the management and the promoters are doing, and that should be in the best interest of the shareholders. If they're taking steps in the shareholders' interest, trust me, you're in good hands.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. I think that was a great insight on how you should judge the management and how you should judge the company, because it is very important for you to do that, because the management is the person who drives the company. So before you start with your presentation, which I think is a very interesting presentation, a lot of unique insights. One last question is, a lot of people, like even me also, wonder like the life as a fund manager. So just share something like unique, which we don't know, like how do you research, or maybe how it has been different from life as a normal person, from being life as a fund manager, where you have to follow some rules and you have to research extensively because you have such big responsibility, because you're managing someone, so many people's fund. So just get us to that before we start your presentation.
I would say yes, like a fund manager's job or work is very much similar to any other work or job that we do. There's a very important additional responsibility on us because we are in a fiduciary relationship, managing others' money. With your own money, you have a different risk appetite. You're answerable only to yourself. But when you're managing others' money, it's public money. The sense of responsibility is tremendous. So I had decided right from day one, anything that can obstruct my sleep even for a minute, I don't want to do any such thing. So when your filters don't allow you to invest into companies with either a very high leverage or low capital efficiency, and most importantly, when you are doubting the corporate governance issues, then you don't have those sleepless nights. First and foremost, that is the most important thing. Then is how do you organize your day so that you can do as much research as possible. There are more than 2,200 actively traded counters in the country. You can't really research each and everything all the time. So how do you use your time smartly so that you have like other fund managers, we have our own team of research analysts as well, and a lot of support from the sell-side research analysts too. So how do you make your own models? How do you filter out things so that you are left with stuff that you need to concentrate on? And then you know more and more details about the portfolio companies you own, meeting the managements, interacting with them, doing a lot of channel checks around them as well. So these are the typical things that we do. And I typically try to keep it in a very organized manner. Again, it's a personal choice whether one is working for 18 hours a day or maybe 12 hours a day. I try to make each day as efficient as possible.
Perfect, sir. Perfect. So I think that was a perfect insight from you on how a fund manager's life is. and how do you go through it? And of course, your analysts help you, and you do a lot of extensive and smart research, which is very, very important because we cannot research each and every company which is listed in the market. So now, without wasting much more time, we are very excited to learn from you why the markets are not reflecting the true picture of the economy, and whether it's actually true or not. And of course, your unique data which you are going to share is being very exciting, would be very exciting to all of us. So I request everyone to be there until the end. It can be a little long, but I can assure you it will be some great learning. You'll be seeing some great unique data points which you may not have been seen till now, and you'll understand why this is happening, why the rally is happening, and why there's a dichotomy between the markets and the economy. So, sir, all over to you.
So hi all, I'll be sharing my slides with you all, and as the topic has been there for understanding the dichotomy of economy and markets. So I must say that I've tried to keep it as simple as possible, and try to also cover the most important points which were really important according to me. In case I've missed out something or you have any other questions, towards the end of the slides, I would really welcome them and try to answer them as best as I can. So without...
so I'll also coordinate the questions in between if anyone asks something which is very relevant. So I'll ask you, otherwise you carry on. I'll take care of that.
Yes, sure. I'll need your help for that. So before I start off, a mandatory kind of a disclaimer. So everything that I'm discussing in this presentation, in case I take any company's name also, please understand that it is purely and purely for educational purposes. Nothing in this presentation, please do not consider anything in this presentation as an investment advice. For your own investment, please do your own research or consult an investment advisor before investing. So I have prepared this material only for education purposes. So then I start off. Before going into it, some very, very relevant quotes which are very, very appealing to me, and I have almost lived by these quotes. And I do think that in case you can imbibe them in your daily and your regular trading investment plans, it will really be helpful. So time and again, this quote has come forward from the legendary Peter Lynch, that far more money has been lost by investors preparing for the correction or trying to anticipate the corrections. Oh, Nifty top ho gaya, this is the top, that is the top, etc. In fact, in anticipation of correction, they have lost more money than has been lost in the corrections themselves. So, you know, especially leave aside the last 10, 12 years, look in the last 5, 6 months itself. Most of you or most of us, right from the Nifty 9,000 onwards, either are ourselves expecting that the Nifty has topped out or near the top, or have been reading or hearing the same, that this is enough, rally is sufficient, it's okay, it should be topping out. And Nifty kept on rallying, not just Nifty, the global markets. And there are a lot of people who took out money at the lows of the markets. So for them, it's an opportunity lost. But there have been a lot of people who went short onto the markets. For them, it's a double loss. While markets are going up, they're actually losing money. So it's very, very important and pertinent quote. It's better to identify good and strong companies and invest in them rather than trying to say this is the bottom of the market, this is the peak of the market. Trust me, almost everybody has failed in it for as long as the markets have been there. So for me, I think the perfect storm this year has been, you know, we started the year with a slowing world economy. As it is, the world leaders were talking about the GDP has been slowing down. And the US-China trade wars were always there, while we were all expecting it to come down or go off with some of the deals, but it never really went away. And then came the wrath of COVID-19. It started towards the end of December 19. In Jan, it was being underestimated. But right from Feb, some kind of fear started coming in, and the whole world was in the grip of fear by the month of March. This to us was a perfect storm. Everything that could go wrong was going wrong. You are weak and then you have a major accident. That's what the world markets were. And then we had a major correction of March 2020. And since then, the most important question that is being asked and I think every day is being asked, is economy is down, market is up. How is that possible? Why is it happening? Who is making it happen? So I'll try to simplify that to the way I look at it. And let's be very, very neutral when we approach this topic. So I've taken out 2 points from here itself, that first of all, we have made an assumption that economy and markets are supposed to be fully linked. That's an assumption made. Why should we assume that? I've taken out few data points on that. And then secondly, most people, all of us are reading articles. Every article is saying that markets are moving up despite economy going down because of very high liquidity. Everybody says liquidity, but nobody says how much is the liquidity. What is the quantity? So if we know that Nifty is around 11,600, we know Sensex is 39,000 something. How much is liquidity? Nobody knows. So if market is moving because of liquidity, it is important for us to know what is this liquidity. I'll try to cover these 2 points. I think things will become clearer. So first point being, why do we say that markets and economy are interlinked? Sensex, the numbers are there from about 1978 or 79, so roughly 1980. It started off with 100 as a base. In the last 40 years, Sensex is up almost 400 times. So roughly 100 became roughly 40,000. That is an annual growth of 16%. Why is it 16? Why not 10 and why not 25? Because the nominal GDP of the country has grown at the rate of 13%. Nominal GDP is a technical term. Put it as aggregate demand. Total demand in the country has grown at the rate of 13%. Usually, if nominal GDP grows at 13%, total demand grows at 13%, almost all businesses put together, their revenue should grow roughly around 13%. But Sensex and Nifty are made up of the top 30 and 50 companies. Hence, their revenues and profits usually grow slightly more than the nominal GDP. Hence, this relationship. So because in last 40 years, rightfully, the Sensex returns have been just little ahead of nominal GDP, it is very fair theoretically and practically to assume that markets and economy are linked. But as my first line in this slide says, that markets are a reflection of economy in the long term. Most of us do not focus on this period in the long term. 40 years, it is absolutely true. Let's say 40 years is a long time. Let's come to 20 years. In the last 20 years, so 2000 to 2020, Sensex is up around 9.6 times. That is around a CAGR of 12%. What has nominal GDP done? It has done 12.4%. Is it linked? Yes, it is linked. But let's come to 10 years. That's where the interest is. In the last 10 years, Sensex is up 2 times only. So 10 years ago, Sensex was roughly 20,000. Today it is roughly 40,000. It is up only 2x. That is a growth of 7% only. While the nominal GDP has grown at 11.6%. You know what 11.6% means? That India's nominal GDP is 3 times of what it was 10 years ago. Now you tell me, if nominal GDP has grown by 3 times, going by everybody's question and logic that markets should be linked with the economy, shouldn't markets have been up by 3 times as well? And had markets been up by 3 times, my friend, 20,000 Sensex by now would have been 60,000. So that's why please focus on this line that I'm saying. Right now we are seeing divergence in the economy and markets. While economy is down, markets are up. But my friend, for last 10 years, economy was moving up, markets weren't moving. Is the current divergence correction of the prior divergence that was there in last 10 years? Nobody has the answers. But we should not focus on just one set of divergence of last few months. Also look at last 10 years divergence. Maybe there's a catch-up rally that markets are doing, correcting itself what it was doing the last 10 years. So this is something which I've not really found in any of the articles. Most articles are trying to almost blame the liquidity. It's not like that. somebody like in technical charts, some of us look at 15-minute charts, some look at 30-minute charts, some look at 1-hour charts, some daily, weekly, monthly, anything. So this movement, maybe, I'm not saying it is, it could be correction of the divergence that we saw in the last 10 years. So that is also one fair point, which as an investor, we should keep all options open. Then the second point, I might get a little theoretical here, but it's important for us to understand. As I said, every media article is talking about liquidity. Nobody is saying what is this liquidity. Everybody knows, all of us, even if we do a poll here, everybody knows market is moving because of liquidity, but it will be very difficult for any one of us to quantify it. So what I've done is, how do we measure this liquidity? So even economists have several measures of liquidity for which they use money supply as a proxy. And for money supply also, there are various measures, M0, M1, M2, M3, and so on. M2 is the most common way of measuring the broad money or the money supply or the liquidity. And in very, very simple terms, what is M2? M2 is cash and bank balances and easily convertible near-term money like saving deposits, money market instruments like liquid funds, etc., mutual funds, and any other fixed deposits and all. So these make up the money supply. Now comes the interesting part. For my analysis,
I think there is some news alert which has come in the front of your screen. तो थोड़ा सा नीचे का दिख नहीं रहा है.
I'm sorry. Thanks for prompting this here. Thanks for prompting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I think जो poll आप बोल रहे थे, I think we should do, because I think 99% of the people will agree that they have heard only one thing, कि market ऊपर जा रहा है because of liquidity. So how many people believe that actually? Because actually I also have read so many articles that sir has told कि liquidity है तो market ऊपर है, liquidity खत्म होगा तो market नीचे आ जाएगा. So how many of you agree with that?
In the chat box, how much is market liquidity? Can people give it? Maybe in the next 30 seconds I close this so that we can proceed.
Sure. So can anyone guess what is the market liquidity right now? I think that no one knows.
Pick up any number that comes to your mind which you think is market liquidity. There are no prizes for guessing and no punishments for getting it wrong as well. So the fact that I have not got any number also shows that yes, our assumption that this number is not printed anywhere is actually true. So that's why I've taken out, what I've taken is M2. Guys, when you go to sites like tradingeconomics.com or CIICdata.com, or you go to World Bank Economic Data, all these numbers are available. But you need to do some research of your own. M2 money, that is a money supply, that will be available only country-wise. So the extra work that I've done is, I added the top 12 countries' money supply, and I take that as a proxy for liquidity. I not only added it, I took out what is the value now, a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, and so on, so that I know how the liquidity is moving. Absolute number has no meaning. It is only in context of how it has moved. Now I'll present a picture to you, which is usually not available elsewhere, and which is this M2 movement or liquidity movement in the last 5 years. And friends, this is how the liquidity has moved in the last 5 years. So you are seeing, and anybody can say, understand, no major technical required. When things are moving almost in a 45-degree upward, and almost every now and then it is making new high, all you can say is global liquidity is only increasing. One key observation is the sharpest rise has been here, isn't it? And this happens to be this post-COVID era, or maybe the COVID era, post-March era. So this is how I've done. Again, I'll repeat, I've just taken M2 money supply of top 12 countries and added them. And I use that as a proxy for global liquidity. The amount as of now is around $89.7 trillion. World market cap is also $90 trillion. So the liquidity in the system is as big as the world market cap put together. But again, if this is liquidity, how do I assume, how do I make that statement that liquidity and markets were linked in the near term? And now my next chart is here. So the yellow line is the global liquidity, which I just showed to you in the previous slide. And the white line is the all country world equity index. I've taken all the countries put together in one. Have a look. Let me navigate this for you. Do we remember that there was a sharp fall in the markets towards the end of 2016? Isn't it? In India, we had demonetization, and in the world, we had US election, where Trump became president, and that was a surprise for the markets, and markets corrected. Just imagine, markets were correcting. More importantly, the liquidity was down. 2017 was a kind of rally that everybody hopes that keeps coming. Why is it that markets were up in a big upswing and so was the liquidity? Is liquidity rising because of market or market rising because of liquidity? I think more you analyze, you'll understand actually it is market that reacts to liquidity and not the vice versa. Very interestingly, where did the market stop? Somewhere around end of 2017 or maybe Jan 2018. Wasn't that the time in India as well, where the mid cap and small cap especially made their tops and still much below those levels? US, yes, look at this, markets which made a top at the end of 2017 and early 2018, that line got really crossed only in somewhere around September 2019. The data is showing that, I'm not saying so. And how about liquidity? Liquidity was not really rising sharply during this period. In this period also, the liquidity was almost flattish in a range. So, आप देख रहे हो that this was also in a range, ना ये बढ़ रहा है, ना ये बढ़ रहा है. Both things were in a range here. Coincidence, again, September 19, we may say there was a tax cut in India. And globally, while US had started selling bonds, had restarted buying back bonds. So liquidity again started coming back to the market. Then came this fall, sharp fall of 2020 because of COVID. Interim period, there was a fall in the liquidity also. But then the central bankers in the world pledged a lot of money, trillions of dollars, to ensure that the markets come out of this crisis. And markets responded, and how? You know, we are at fresh all-time highs in terms of world equity index. India may not have hit all-time high, but US markets are well above their highs. And it's almost a one-to-one correlation. I'm spending more time in this chart because this is the proof that yes, markets are responding to liquidity. And is it fair to say, you know, most people are trying to predict and say this is the top. Every now and then you will get a message or a call or an advice that market is a top here or market is a top at 200 points away or 500 points away. It's a futile exercise. It's very difficult to predict tops and bottoms. We can invest in good companies, and that's what we can do. But again, if we want to understand, if liquidity has been there, money printing is there, how much can it go on? Because if market is running on liquidity, but the economy is weak, it is almost like this man who's running on the razor sharp blade, that it's a very, very tough balancing act. But a lot of us also think and believe that Federal Reserve has already printed so much money, their balance sheet has expanded, how much more can they do? An answer to that is an important one here, because you see the US liquidity has been rising too. Out of that $89 trillion liquidity, $18.4 trillion is coming from US itself. And when I compare the Federal Reserve balance sheet with the Bank of Japan, so how big is your balance sheet? It is measured as a percentage of GDP. So my white line here is Japan, that is Bank of Japan's balance sheet as a percentage of GDP of Japan. That number is 132%. So Japan ki bank ki balance sheet is 132% of GDP of Japan. Where is US? Despite this up move, sharp move, it is at 36. I'm not saying 36 will go to 132. I'm just putting a context. Technically also कहते हैं ना that previous high को if it has breached, it's a breakout. So can 36 go to 132? I'm not saying it will go, but one superpower, one developed country has already gone there, and markets are markets. They don't know any limits. So don't be under the impression that Fed has expanded sufficiently and it cannot expand more. The tools available are always there. So those tools are definitely there. We have to watch out for what the Federal Reserve says, and they are the leading central banker in the world. And then we get to know whether the stimulus would be on or not. One of the objective ways of measuring that is look at the interest rates as well. So what is happening to US 10-year yields? This is the US 10-year yields over the last 60 years. ये मैं कोई last 1-2 साल का नहीं निकाला हूँ. It is last 60 years. It's very clear that it has been only trending down, something that had hit more than 15% 40 years ago. So 40 years ago, it was 15%. Who would have thought that in 40 years' time, this would go to under 1%? But the trend as of now looks down. As you can see, it is not really, in technical terms, we say it is non-stop making lower top, lower bottom, isn't it? For the last 40 years, it's making lower top and lower bottom. And anybody who looks at technicals would know that lower top, lower bottom is not a sign of uptrend. It's a sign of downtrend. But again, we need to watch out for what Federal Reserve says. Recently, very recently, few days ago, they have made a very important policy change. They said that instead of targeting 2% inflation, they will target average inflation of 2%. They very smartly, they changed only one word. The earlier target was 2% inflation. Now target is average inflation of 2%. What does that mean? If for a few months inflation has been below 2%, then they will allow inflation to remain above 2% for a few months also, so that average is 2%. That also means if inflation briefly goes above 2%, don't expect them to hike rates in a hurry. That's what it implies, at least their statement implies. So if markets may take it as a sign that they are indicating that the interest rates could remain lower for a longer period of time, and hence the liquidity is on a higher side. So these are important factors that we need to watch out. I was talking more on the Japan and the US side so far, but also have a look at how the other economies have done. Most economies have given a fiscal stimulus. Total fiscal stimulus has been more than $7 trillion for all the major countries put together. And that is combined of around 9% of combined GDP of those countries. So India is here. India has given around 6% of GDP as fiscal stimulus. If they can give more, we can have sooner recovery, faster recovery, and we need to really check out for those. And most central banks in the world have cut rates. Everybody has cut rates. From a Turkey, which has cut nearly 400 basis points, lowest is Australia at 50 basis points. India itself has cut over 115 basis points. So every country is giving stimulus in some form or the other. That's why the overall liquidity has gone up. So the leaders are Japan and US. That's why we track them a little more, but it has been there across the board. So if most governments want to give out stimulus and liquidity is on a higher side, markets are ultimately dependent upon where the money is moving. There was a very interesting data shared that nearly 86% of world debt investments, nearly 86% of world's debt investments are yielding less than 2%. So for example, India में हम FD करते हैं, so we get 5-6% yield. So 86% of world investments in debt market is giving a yield of only 2%. With more and more liquidity coming in, that 2% is not attractive. That money is moving to equity, and hence we are seeing that reaction.
I think, sir, that's an astonishing data. Only 2% return we are getting on 86% of the world. Can it happen in India, sir? वो मुझे एक question अभी आया. So is it possible we can have 2% interest rate?
So frankly speaking, 20 years ago in India also we had 15-16% rates. Who would have imagined that FD will become 5%?
Absolutely.
I'll tell you two things that I had not imagined. One thing I've seen this year, and the other thing I've been seeing in the last few years. I had never imagined a tradable instrument, which is usually bought and sold, can go into negative. Didn't we all see crude oil going into the red? मतलब आप क्रूड खरीदोगे तो आपको पैसे मिलेंगे. Unimaginable. Sometime back I seen the data, $15 trillion of world money. You know $15 trillion कितना होता है? India की market cap is $2 trillion. India's GDP is around $3 trillion. And $15 trillion मतलब इंडिया के मार्केट कैप से 7 गुना ज्यादा पैसा was put in 10-year instrument जिसका yield was negative. मतलब आप जितना पैसा आज डाल रहे हो 10 साल बाद उससे कम मिलेंगे. 10 year का income zero नहीं, negative. That was the kind of risk aversion that was there. And such a time when debt instruments are giving such low amounts, more and more liquidity coming in, so the risk on is there. And till when is the risk on there? We can't see that. But whenever we see that tides are changing, that's the time we need to change. Otherwise, we have to be in the direction of the tide. Otherwise, tide you can't really swim against the tide. बहा के ले जाएगा market से.
True.
But I think that was a very, very important thing. Apart from liquidity, there is some important sense as well. Please understand that markets are forward-looking. We all know this. Isn't it true that हमारे markets ने low बनाया था on 23rd March? Is it only a coincidence that India में तो lockdown चालू ही नहीं हुआ था? We had only had a जनता curfew before that, or Sunday को. I think the lockdowns had begun only from 24th or 25th, roughly there. But you know what happened? As we said, when we started the year, sporadic incidents of coronavirus were being heard. Jan के end होते होते चाइना में बढ़ने लगा. Feb में world में और जगह जाने लगा, तो there was some fear coming in. By Feb end, everybody was scared and the markets were fearing and preparing for the lockdown. And if lockdowns are there, economy is impacted, business is impacted, job is impacted, consumption impacted, and there could be chaos. And you cannot measure that chaos. That's why markets were very, very fearful. And when you are very, very fearful, what do? The markets tanked. The risk on assets tanked. And we saw the speed at which it was falling. I think the speed of fall was even worse than what we saw in 2008. But that was March. Lockdowns came in. And after that, as lockdowns progressed, markets started preparing for return to normalcy. Aren't we seeing the data every month being better than the previous month? It's not yet gone back to 100% normalcy. But in Feb and March, market was preparing for the lockdowns and the slowdown. Now markets know that the slowdown is there. Lockdowns are being done. Right now, we are not locking down. We are unlocking. Progressively, we are only unlocking, and economic activities are showing some improvement in the last few months, especially once after April and May relaxations were done. I'll not focus on all the things. I've given a list of all the major indicators that I keep a track of, but few things that stand out. You know, tractor sales have been growing significantly. So the rural India has been doing reasonably well. The currency in circulation or the money supply in India is also growing at a faster pace. Inflation itself is up. That means the demand destruction is not as bad, although it is more on the supply side, but demand destruction is not all that bad. FIIs have been buyers in April, May, June, July, August. All 5 months, FIIs have bought money. I think April may have been very, very flattish, but otherwise all the months they have been buying money, buying the equities. Power consumption has gone back very, very close to normalcy. So most indicators are suggesting that we are moving more towards normalcy, not towards the lower point. But what happens is most of these economic data points come with a lag. So the worst impact, when was the highest lockdown? April and May. If April and May had the highest lockdown, so anything that is in the June quarter is like bound to look bad. We recently had the June quarter earnings also. Obviously, the corporate earnings will look bad, but things are only improving. Most management said that July is much better than what April, May, June was. Things are improving. The June quarter, April, May, June quarter GDP will come, I think tomorrow, 31st. Yeah, tomorrow is the date when GDP is released. But that is for the June quarter. Everybody knows that number is bad. And market doesn't look at things that is of the past. Market loves to estimate. It is forward looking. So a lot of people will think, oh, that GDP number is so bad, then why is market strong? But that is something that market knew in Feb and March itself, even before the lockdown. So please understand those parts. Markets are forward looking. What is obvious is there in the price. So that was, I think, a pretty important thing for me. Few indicators, few things that really stand out. I've tried to list them down for you all. So FY21 real GDP estimate, most agencies are giving somewhere around -4, -5% as the GDP estimate. I'm going by the credit rating agencies like S&P, CRISIL, and Moody's, etc. So most of them are somewhere around -4, -5. If everybody is estimating that, everybody knows it, market is the first one to know it. So market is already discounting it. If -4, -5 becomes -2, market is going to like it. But -4, -5 becomes -6, 7, market may not like it. But most of the agencies are also suggesting and saying that FY22 will be a big bounce back for two reasons. One, most probably virus would be out of the way. And secondly, the base is looking at statistically low. So on a lower base, the numbers are likely to look higher. So that same thing is applying for corporate profits as well. The numbers are looking bad this year, but markets are forward looking. They want to estimate for FY22 and move as per that. So hence all this high frequency data that keeps coming, core sector growth, industrial production, PMI, they are looking like a decline this year. There's no doubt. There are no mincing the word. They will look like a decline this year. But again, if you want to understand the economy has been slowing. We want to see how the recovery will be. But markets are forward looking. They want to see if the recovery is good enough for us to project a bigger growth in FY22. If economy is slow, growth is slow, the tax collection is bound to be lower. And if tax collection is low, the fiscal deficit is bound to be high. So these are known things by the markets. Right now, because of higher inflation, RBI is not cutting rates, and their minutes also suggested that only after the inflation comes down, they would be looking at cutting rates, which should happen sooner or later. Leading indicators that auto sales have started showing recovery and power consumption has started showing recovery. These are lead indicators. So these are first things that have started showing the recovery. Thankfully for us, a large population is in rural side and rainfall has been 7% above normal. So as it is, the incidence of cases in the rural side was lower for a virus, plus the rural side rainfall has been good. As a result, the Kharif sowing is up 9%. So all these is very, very good for the rural economy. And for India, majority of the population is staying in the rural India. So this is a very, very important part. You and me may be staying majority of the cities, and hence our observations are related primarily to the cities, but India's GDP and whole economy is as per rural plus urban. Rural is doing pretty fine. Crude is down around 25% this year, and India imports nearly 80% of its requirement every year. Falling crude is very good for government finances. What did we do? Our forex reserves are at $535 billion. That is more than 12, 14 months of imports. Typically it is said that if you have more than 10 months of import as your forex reserve, you are in a strong position. In a crisis situation, India has more than 12 months of imports. You are in a brilliant position. In the early 90s, when our back was against the wall, we had less than 3 months of money as imports. Less than 3 months of imports as the forex reserves. So forex reserves rising and debt to GDP being low for the country, we are much better than a lot of our peers in the region. As a result, our balance of payment continues to be in surplus. Hence, we are not seeing a big impact on rupee as well. So I'm not trying to say everything is good. There's no doubt that economy is in a slowdown mode. This year will be a decline for not just India, but for world economy. Only thing that we need to check out from here on is our cases, what's happening on the COVID side. At least in August, active cases that have been added in August on a per day basis is around 40% lower than what was done in July. So the recoveries have been very, very good. We need to really watch out that there shouldn't be a second spike. And this year is discounted, but next year the growths are expected. If there is any danger to that, then the markets will want to take that in their stride. So these are the things that we need to watch out in future. So this slide I've made just to make all of us understand. In the market right now, what is the hope? The hope is that the decrease would be there in the COVID infections and deaths. The hope is that we'll have a medical breakthrough and so many 20 odd vaccines are being made under preparation. Something will really work. And once that is made and that is made and made available to all of us, that will be a major breakthrough. And as these two things happen, especially decrease in COVID infections, we will return back to normal economic activity. And hence more and more fiscal stimulus will come in, monetary stimulus will come in, and the economy will kickstart itself. That's the hope. Then what's the fear? Opposite of this is the fear. In case there is a sudden increase in COVID infections, if there's a second wave spike, like we had seen in Spanish flu 100 years ago, or if there's a delayed resumption of economic activity, which we are all expecting will happen now, and if lockdowns keep getting extended. So that's the fear. Market right now is more towards the hope than towards the fear, not entirely on one side. There are several things that can be done. I've tried to list them here. Things that are in favor of the market currently are that sentiment has suddenly turned positive. The liquidity definitely is on a positive side, and there's monetary and fiscal support to the markets. What is negative for the market currently is the US-China tensions are not going away. The valuations are on the higher side, and the credit risk continues to be high. So these are the risks on the market side. Market will want to swing like a pendulum in these things, and we need to watch out for these factors to understand the movements rather than saying this is the peak. How do we invest in these times? And I just tried to put them in few words, what has been my learning. And I've kept on saying here also today that predicting a top or a bottom is a futile exercise. It has been proven time and again. And I know this much, if the best of experts have not managed to do it in the world ever, I'll not be able to do it. So I'm not any superhuman. So this is my learning in the second line that I've written, that for success in market, one needs to take the path of least resistance. So be in the tide of the market. And the path of least resistance in the market, when it is having full liquidity, the path of least resistance is upwards. So this is what I believe, and I move accordingly. So I do track liquidity a lot. So longer term economic activity and economic expectations are important. So economic expectations are best for high growth period for next 10, 20 years is very good for India, especially because of its demographic dividend. Youngest population in the world, around 28 years of median age, compared to 45 or so for all major economies. But in near term, I do track liquidity, and I do believe market move more in direction of liquidity in the short term. What is the golden rule to invest in markets? So I just quote George Bernard Shaw, and he had said that the golden rule is that there is no golden rule. So there has been no golden rules. You have to keep evolving your methods as per the changing dynamics in the markets. And you know, I've intentionally put out this quotation because markets, especially in the last few months, have turned very, very speculative. And legendary Warren Buffett has said about speculation that speculation is most dangerous when it looks easiest. So when you are sure that in the morning I'll come at 9:15 in the morning in the market, press the button of buy in a stock, and at 2 o'clock after my lunch, I'll press the sell button and go home with profits. When it looks that simple, boss, it is not good. So if something is that simple, please be wary. You should ask questions, and you should be really very, very watchful in such case. So nothing comes for easy. There are no free lunches in this world. I try to take out some checklist for all of us to avoid major falls in the market. Most of our trading and investing, will realize that it is one or two trades or one or two investments that went really bad. If they can take those really bad ones out, that itself will improve the overall portfolio performance. So I've just tried to list down some very, very simple things, both on the fundamental side and technical side. My idea has been very simple. Buy strong companies which are fundamentally strong, and buy companies whose prices are also technically strong. So if a company is both fundamentally and technically strong, the chances of making a loss or chances of making a big loss gets reduced substantially. So few of the fundamental things to start off, what I look at, and I'll put this as a poll as well. Maybe for every question, I'll try to wait for 30 seconds to see the answers and then accordingly move forward.
Sure, I'll help you in that.
Do you know any major multi-bagger in the last decade or 2 decades which had a high debt equity ratio? Let's see, debt equity ratio of more than say 3 times, and it became a multi-bagger. 200 stock है market में. How many stocks became a multi-bagger in last 10-20 years with a high debt equity ratio? If you can name a few, I'll wait for 30 seconds and then proceed.
So we are getting SpiceJet, Granules India, and Facebook we are getting no. There are no companies. So we've got 4 no's. Adani Enterprises. I think none exists. Reliance. None exists.
4 names here, but I'll tell you. First of all, it is 4 names out of 2200. Secondly, some of them do not have debt equity of more than 3 times. So it is different, but the answer definitely is, it is such a small number, it's such a rare number, that it proves the point that most multi-baggers have a low debt equity ratio. There have been hundreds of multi-baggers, but most multi-baggers have the lowest debt equity ratio. So can we say, to have a strong, fundamentally strong company, look for companies which have a lower debt equity ratio, and these numbers are easily available even on a simple site like Screener.in. We don't have to have a very big software for that. So I got a few more names here, but the names, all these names do not have debt equity of more than 3 times. So they are multi-baggers. You are right, absolutely on that. But most of these names don't have more than 3 times of debt equity ratio. Or if they had, they must have had only for a brief period, not throughout this period. For me, the second important point on the fundamental side, if a company's return on capital is less than cost of capital, how can it create shareholder wealth? When I write this line, I was thinking, is it very technical? What terms say return on capital, cost of capital? Leave that aside. Let's think we are doing a business. आप और मैं business कर रहे हैं. And if we आप और मैं business करेंगे, I'm using a bit of Hindi. I hope it's okay. बीच में I'll try to use majority.
Sure, sure. It's perfect.
So अगर आप और मैं business करते हैं, business suppose पूरे लोन पे लेके करें या अपना पैसा भी लगाए, अपना पैसा भी लगाते तो उसका एक opportunity cost है. If the cost of capital is 12% and we are earning 10%, profit है 10% का, लेकिन cost of capital 12% है आपकी, तो 2% जो कम आ रहा है, वो business करके क्या फायदा? बिजनेस करके तो तब फायदा है ना जब आपके कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल से ज्यादा रिटर्न आए. 100 रुपए की कैपिटल पे 5 रुपया कमाना है तो कोई बिजनेस करना है क्या साल में? 100 रुपए की कैपिटल पे अगर 5 रुपया कमाना है तो आप गवर्नमेंट पेपर्स में लगा दीजिए, गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटी में लगा दीजिए, एफडी में लगा दीजिए, उसमें बन जाएगा. बट अगर आप 100 रुपए के कैपिटल पे 12, 15, 18 रुपया रेगुलरली कमाना चाहते हैं, देन दैट बिजनेस इज गोइंग टू क्रिएट वेल्थ. So please ensure if you want to buy, you may choose to buy a weak company, which is fundamentally weak, just technically strong. But if you are looking for a fundamentally strong company, you will find that fundamentally strong companies' return on capital is more than cost of capital. Generally, in India, the cost of capital is around 10-12%. Recent 6 महीने 1 साल को छोड़ दीजिए, but generally cost of capital is 10-12%. जो 10-12% से कम का प्रॉफिट कमाती है कंपनी, प्रॉफिट डिवाइडेड बाय कैपिटल, अगर वो 10-12% से कम का प्रॉफिट कमाती है, वो कुछ भी हो सकती है, बट वो फंडामेंटली स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं हो सकती. Please remember that. And if you take these things, you can actually filter out a lot of these companies. And most of the companies that failed, you will notice that they were having these things very, very clearly shown in their balance sheet. Third important point, everybody who invests fundamentally knows this. Operating cash flows are more important than reported profits. But मैं गारंटी के साथ कह सकता हूं that 99% plus investors do not look at operating cash flows. And this is the critical part. मैं आपको एक डिफरेंस बताता हूं, आपको समझ में आएगा why operating cash flow is important. मैं एक एग्जांपल लेता हूं, राइट? सपोज मेरे पास अपनी कंपनी है A और मेरे पास मेरी एक दूसरी कंपनी है B. ठीक है, मेरी कंपनी में मैं, अब मुझे अगर मान लीजिए फ्रॉड करना है, मैंने क्या किया, मेरी कंपनी में और कोई माल तो बिक नहीं रहा, मैंने कंपनी में दिखाया मैंने 100 करोड़ का सेल किया है, राइट? अगर मैंने 100 करोड़ का सेल किया तो वो तो सेल्स में दिखाएगा ना इनकम स्टेटमेंट में, एंड देन इट विल ट्रांसलेट इनटू प्रॉफिट, प्रॉफिट आ जाएगा. बट ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो कहता है सेल से भैया मुझे मतलब नहीं है. सेल आपने किसको किया? मैंने देखा सेल किया है 100 करोड़ का, एक कंपनी ने सेल किया बी कंपनी को, दोनों मेरी कंपनी, और जो 100 करोड़ का सेल किया दैट वाज ऑन क्रेडिट. मजे की बात है उस 100 करोड़ के सेल में 1 रुपया भी वापस नहीं आया, सेल हो गई, इट इज शोन एज 100 करोड़ एज सेल, बट दैट 100 करोड़ इज स्टैंडिंग एज डेटर्स इन द बैलेंस शीट. बिजनेस में पैसा कितना आया? जीरो. इफ दैट मनी हैज नॉट कम इन, वो प्रॉफिट का मैं क्या करूं? वो तो खाली कागज पे ना प्रॉफिट. बिजनेस चलाने के लिए कागज का प्रॉफिट नहीं दिखा सकते. दैट ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो हैज टू कम इन. आई जस्ट गिव यू वन एडजस्टमेंट, देयर आर whole scores of other adjustments. So I was one of the happiest people when cash flow statement reporting became mandatory in India. And please focus on operating cash flows. मैं इतना सिंपल कह सकता हूं, आप कोई भी कंपनी के 10 साल के ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लोज देखिए, अगर लास्ट 10 साल में 7 से ज्यादा बार ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो पॉजिटिव है, दैट इटसेल्फ मींस कंपनी रीजनेबली स्ट्रांग है. आपको कोई बहुत बड़ा मैं रिसर्च करने नहीं कह रहा. तो अगर डेट इक्विटी रेशियो कम है, रिटर्न ऑन कैपिटल कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल से ज्यादा है, और ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो ज्यादातर टाइम पॉजिटिव रही है, यू आर रीजनेबली स्ट्रांग, यू आर रीजनेबली कॉन्फिडेंट दैट द कंपनी इज फंडामेंटली स्ट्रांग. बहुत सिंपल सी चीज है, एक कंपनी में ये करने के लिए 10 मिनट भी नहीं लगेंगे, और इतना तो करना चाहिए हमें अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए. अगेन कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के लिए तो मैंने आपको कहा है. डू यू नो एनी मेजर मल्टी बैगर इन द लास्ट डिकेड और सो? कंपनी, हमें पता है कॉर्पोरेट मिस गवर्नेंस इश्यूज हैं, एंड शायद लीकेज ऑफ मनी हो या टेकिंग डिसीजंस व्हिच इज नॉट इन फेवर ऑफ द इन्वेस्टर्स. दोज थिंग्स के साथ में मल्टी बैगर नहीं बनते. एंड मैंने प्रेजेंटेशन के बिगिनिंग में भी उस पॉइंट्स को हाईलाइट करने की कोशिश की थी. ट्राई टू स्टे अवे फ्रॉम कंपनीज व्हिच आर ट्राइंग टू हाइड ट्रू इंफॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम यू. जो आपसे इंफॉर्मेशन छुपा रहे हैं या ऐसे स्टेप्स ले रहे हैं विच इज नॉट इन द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ शेयर होल्डर्स, स्टे अवे. वो सब्जेक्टिवली आपको डिसाइड करना. बिकॉज अगर आप वैसे कंपनी में लगाते हैं और फिर लॉस होता है तो दोष कंपनी का नहीं है. एक इंटरेस्टिंग स्टडी मैंने की, नॉट द रिवर्स साइड. BSE 500 में लास्ट 12 साल के सबसे बड़े बड़े मल्टी बैगर्स को मैंने निकाला, एंड देन आई वाज ट्राइंग टू सी कि उनमें फीचर्स क्या थे. एंड मुझे मोस्ट कॉमन फीचर्स यही मिले, उन सबके पास में डेट इक्विटी रेशियो लोअर था, उन सबके पास में रिटर्न ऑन कैपिटल वाज मोर देन कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल, उन सबके पास मोर देन 80% ऑन द लास्ट 10 years द ऑपरेटिंग कैश फ्लो वाज पॉजिटिव। मुझे ये भी मिला दैट वो सारी कंपनियों में कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस के मेजर इश्यूज नहीं थे। छोटे बहुत क्वेश्चन तो हम सभी उठा लेते कोई कोई कंपनी में, मेजर कोई इशू नहीं था। So this was the common things of all the multi-baggers. So मैं reverse engineering करके गया. So these things were proven by the multi-baggers of last 10-12 years and any period of 10-12 years. So again, time and again, this has been proven. At this point, मैं सोच रहा था इस वक्त में कि कुछ एक सिंपल सा सवाल आप लोगों के लिए रखूं. I hope I get this answer on this forum. I'll proceed once I get the answer. Can you name company from Nifty 50? तो 2200 में से मैंने काम आसान कर दिया आपका, खाली 50 कंपनी बचे जिसने 20% का एनुअल रिटर्न दिया लास्ट 1 साल में, लास्ट 2 साल में, लास्ट 3 साल में, लास्ट 5 साल में, लास्ट 10 साल में, लास्ट 15 साल में, लास्ट 20 साल में. In each of last 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 9, 20 years, this company has given 20% annualized returns and it is in Nifty 50. Let's see who gets this answer first. मैं प्राइस से ये दे सकता हूँ, मैं नाम अनाउंस कर सकूंगा एंड आई लीव इट टू यश टू अनाउंस द नेम.
HDFC बैंक, एशियन पेंट्स, HDFC, HUL, एशियन पेंट.
अभी तक तो नहीं आया. I have seen the names HDFC Bank, Asian Paints, HDFC.
I'll share the names from Facebook also. We are getting a lot of names. Infi, HDFC Bank, TCS.
I sure Britannia भी नहीं है.
Britannia, Asian Paints, MRF.
TCS भी नहीं है. अरे भाई साहब ऐसे तो पूरा निफ्टी 50 निकल जाएगा.
बजाज फाइनेंस,
HUL भी नहीं है.
Infosys, Bajaj Finance, same answers on Facebook. Asian Paints,
वही मेडिकल्स तो निफ्टी के अंदर नहीं आता.
TCS, Bajaj Finance, HCL Tech, RIL.
अभी तक तो नहीं आया नाम मेरे पास में.
ITC.
ITC नहीं है सर. I got the correct answer here. Nestle is the right answer.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, so I think that's the only prize I can give you.
Deepu Nanwani has got the right answer. It's Nestle.
So congratulations. I think that was a good one. Nestle इकलौती कंपनी है जिसका इस सारे पीरियड में 20% से ज्यादा रिटर्न है. आई एम नॉट रिकमेंडिंग इट, जैसे मैंने पहले कहा था. नेस्ले का डेट इक्विटी रेशियो कितना है? 0. इट हैज नो डेट. नेस्ले की रिटर्न ऑन कैपिटल कितनी है? मैंने आपसे कहा था 12% के आसपास कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल होती है. आपको पता है लास्ट 30 साल में जो सबसे गंदा साल गया नेस्ले का, वर्स्ट, लास्ट 30 साल में वर्स्ट ईयर फॉर नेस्ले में उसका रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी वाज 18%. वर्स्ट. किसी कंपनी का 18 और 15 होता तो हम कहते हैं अच्छा रिटर्न है उसका. उसका 30 साल का सबसे गंदा साल 18% का गया है. लास्ट 30 साल की एवरेज 70% है. That's the kind of company it has been. Operating cash flows have never been negative. 30 years में 30 years. Corporate governance issue definitely नहीं है. And obviously it's one of the biggest multi-baggers. So ये points को समझाने के लिए मैंने एग्जांपल लिया था. And imagine we all look for multi-baggers. ये सवाल का जवाब आने में भी हमें इतना टाइम लगा. So look for good quality stuff. आपका प्रोसेस सही होगा तो सही रास्ते पे जरूर पहुंच जाएंगे. कहते हैं ना, अगर आप राजधानी में बैठे हैं तो दिल्ली जरूर पहुंचेंगे.
True.
Some small things on the technical side as well. No recommendations again. But मैं जरूर कहूंगा, majority of the people who lose money on technical because उनके पास सिस्टम तो होता है but discipline नहीं होता. Everybody has a system but doesn't have the discipline. Remember, if you dishonor the system, आप अगर सिस्टम को डिसऑनर करोगे तो मार्केट आपको डिसऑनर कर देगा sooner or later. And please remember, stop loss is more important than the target. Cut your losses, let your profits ride. That's the mantra of the most successful, biggest investors in the world history. majority of the most successful hedge fund managers globally also, if I have read it correctly, 70% of their trades are wrong. They go in losses. But the 30% of the trades where they make money is the bigger money because they honor their system. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि आप बड़ा इन्वेस्टर हो गया तो जो कर रहा सारा ही सही है, वो जिस तरह से कर रहा वो सही है. That system is important. So please keep that in mind. Usually कहते हैं कि systems technically दो तरीके के होते हैं. One is on mean reversion, the other is on trend. Mean reversion जो करते हैं, जो स्टाइल होता है, उसके अंदर में if something is falling, it looks good. That's the way it is because we expect it to go back to the mean. And trend following systems में गिरने वाले चीज is what is shorted and बढ़ने वाली चीज is bought. Please get into a system that suits your style. आप देखिए आपके माइंडसेट को क्या सूट करता है. Based on that, choose your system and stick to that system. Systems are not wrong. Lot of times people say, and I've heard and seen lot of investors saying, "अरे मेरा system खराब है." No, system is not bad. There is no system that will make you money all the time. But over a period of time, those systems will make money. So please ensure those parts. There could be investors who do not look at technicals. It's not a suggestion, but I have found with the most biggest investors also, if you are not using technical, simplest thing, जैसे simple चीज मैंने technicals वालों को fundamental में check करने को कहा, you can check a 200 week moving average. अगर आपकी कंपनी का प्राइस 200 वीक मूविंग एवरेज के ऊपर में है तो एटलीस्ट यू नो दैट आप डायरेक्शन वाइज मार्केट के डायरेक्शन के अगेंस्ट नहीं. दैट्स द सिंपलेस्ट थिंग दैट यू कैन डू एज एन इन्वेस्टर. Obviously, there are a host of technical parameters, trading systems. I was not here to discuss a trading system, but my thoughts on maintaining a system are these. If you cannot be disciplined, boss, do not have a system. Because don't blame the system, it is the discipline that will decide whether you are going to be successful or not. And few concluding quotations, जो आज के तारीख में बहुत ही ज़्यादा वैलिड है, that we all are saying ये मार्केट तो बढ़ते ही जा रहा है, कब रुकेगा? बॉस, market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. Do not bet against the market is what my learning has been. It suits your style, go ahead. But this is what majority of the stalwarts have said in the past through their experience. And that's what I've applied. So we can have the questions, Yash.
Sure, sir. The pleasure was all ours because it was amazing. Truly amazing. Like there's so many great data points. The way you shared the, so you can just close your screen so that we can see you properly.
Sure. Is it fine now?
Yeah, it's perfect, sir. So, sir, first of all, thank you so much. It was an amazing presentation. Like it was great insights, and the way you presented it in such a simple way. Like I think already a lot of comments you are receiving on the comment section. It was perfect. And we even a layman investor जिसको अगर properly कुछ भी नहीं समझ में आता market में, even he can understand that and he can apply it in the markets. So now we are open with questions. We'll take few questions on Facebook as well and some from the chat box from the Zoom. So you can ask your questions to sir, and Alok sir will be delighted to answer that. So someone is asking, where do we get M2 liquidity data? Is it possible to get?
I combined the top 12 countries data. ये combined form में so it doesn't come. But if you search for M2 data or maybe money supply data, typical sites that will give you country-wise data, they are tradingeconomics.com, ceicdata.com, and World Bank economic data. So you just search on these three things, you will get it.
Great. So there is one question.
Just I'm trying to type the name.
Sure.
बाकी थोड़ा सा सर्च करना पड़ेगा. World Bank also has a data bank. So if you just search money supply there, I just written what to search, you will get it. But क्या ना, you may have to look at the top 10-12 countries and then उसके total को judge करना पड़ता. I would say watch out for articles which are being said about liquidity. Watch out for articles on what the central bankers in the world are saying about liquidity. And that will give you a better insight, because most of these data points on the site could be little lagging. So look out for those, but you will get the data. These are all official data points.
Yes. Someone is asking, is it or what's the signal to look at if the markets have to reverse? Is there any signal to look at that?
So I'll tell you something. आपने यश मुझसे शुरू में पूछा था. When I started off, like most others, I used to also think that I can predict the top and the bottom. एक दो बार सही से पकड़ा भी. But sooner I realized, with less losses, थोड़े बहुत loss लेके, that it is a futile exercise. So we cannot buy at bottom and sell at the peak. Most of us theoretically we कहते हैं ना, buy low, sell high. You cannot buy at the bottom and sell at the peak, because जो आज bottom है कर उससे नया bottom बन जाए. Similarly, when you sell something at the peak, which is peak now, there could be a higher peak. The success mantra is buy high, sell higher.
True.
So very difficult to say that when it will turn around, but let me put it this way. Based on whatever trading system you're using, some would use an Elliott wave, some would use some Fibonacci extensions, some would use an Ichimoku, some would use, there are multiple indicators, an MACD is there, an RSI is there. So wait for confirmation to come there. Don't try to predict, okay, at this level, this is the peak. Typically, most of us may struggle with that. So you'll make out a level that below this level, I am not going to be bullish, and above that level, I'm not going to be bearish. Once you have that clarity as an investor and trader, then you are equipped to take risk on the capital.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. So, sir, a lot of people on Facebook are asking about commodity, as in gold and silver. They have given a huge rally. So, is there any view which you have?
Gold and silver, gold being a precious metal, fundamentally it's very difficult to evaluate. उसका कोई EPS or P ratio तो होता नहीं है. So it's very difficult to evaluate. Typically in the past we have seen there has been a correlation. When the US fiscal deficit goes up and interest rates are down, the gold is strong. That's a correlation. So that's why we are seeing that the gold has been strong. Technically speaking, based on whatever parameters one is looking, the charts that I look at, I have found that the gold is rising and is in a strong territory. So, and it is also considered as the hiding space or hedging space, especially when the markets are most fearful. So combining all these, I do think that both gold and silver, they look good. They are looking good. Both are looking good on charts as well. They are stronger right now. But obviously, I can't make a recommendation or give out an exact level, but they look strong. So, but there's no fundamental evaluation for them. So they look strong on the chart.
Perfect, sir. So someone is asking that what are the likely implications of the US elections likely on our economy and world markets?
The US election is one of the major events. I would say, let us put this way. What was the biggest surprise in US elections that we saw in the last 20 years? The biggest surprise was the election of November 2016. I don't think anybody had anticipated that Trump would come to power, because majority of the polls were suggesting Hillary Clinton will win. What happened after that? There was a correction in the market and markets resumed the up move. If that is my experience of the past, there could be volatility in and around election, and this time election is happening at a time when COVID is there. Is there a chance of election getting delayed? Yes, there is a chance of election getting delayed. Is there a chance that some may have some questions and litigation, and there could be a surprise element? Everything is there. There could be volatility around election also. But imagine somebody in March thought, right now it is COVID, and in November there is election. It's better not to invest this year. I saw 50% market has gone up. After rising 50%, even if it falls 10%, if it has to, the call doesn't work. So the idea is there would be volatility in and around the election, but you can never time it appropriately. So our investment and trading plan should incorporate that if that volatility is there, how am I going to react? So an investor can spread out the investment over the 3-4 month period, few before the election, few after the election, so that you don't miss out as well. And if there's a fall, you participate. And for a trader, definitely prices are everything. And if prices are not moving as per your trading system, get out of the position. But volatility is something that is almost guaranteed in and around an important event like election.
Sure, sir. Perfect. So there's a good question on Facebook. How to find corporate governance issues, especially in the small and mid cap space, and how to find whether management is good or not.
So, that's a very valid question, and nobody gets it absolutely correctly. But at least we can watch out and see what's happening, and is the management what steps are the management taking? Is it let us put this way: is it trying to hide information? That becomes quite obvious to us. Is it taking far too much of loan, which the other companies, the same segment, are not taking? Is it having far too much of expenses being done, especially for the capex side or the repair side, which is much higher than what others are doing? For a particular capacity in an industry, if X amount is required for capex, if this management is putting much more on a regular basis, that's not good. The profit that this company is earning, is the promoter giving that money away as loan or as gift to some of his own companies? Are the contracts in the company being given to promoters' own private companies only? Several such things. So you read various reports, especially the annual report. You look out for management interviews and see. You have to read between the lines and you see that actions are being taken. Most of these actions you will get to know. But again, nobody is going to write and bold for you as an article head that this thing is going wrong. You need to understand yourself. I gave an example of an IT company as well. There was a particular telecom company also in 2010. Every quarter they would change their accounting policy on how to record foreign currency gain or loss on forex loans. If you keep on changing that policy to suit you, when there's a gain, they want to show it in the PL account so that profits go up. When there's a loss, they want to show in the balance sheet so that profits are not impacted. Well, these things are there. Notes to accounts will have it, but nobody reads the notes to accounts. So most of these things are very obvious, very much there, and it's a method of selection by rejection. So you are just wanting to reject companies where things are obvious. So I'm not trying to say everybody is to be blamed. It's not like an investigator कहते हैं ना जो investigator सब पे शक करता है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं. If something is obvious in certain companies, stay away. You may not be 100% sure, but your methods are suggesting that it could be questionable. Stay away. हमें कौन सा 22 company में लगाना है? You need to hold a few companies on.
True. So we'll take the last two questions. So someone is asking that there's always sector rotation which is going on, and like we have seen a sector rotation in the last 10 years. So what, according to you, should be the next sector rotation, and do you have anything special in a theme, something like that?
For me, I look at themes that are there in the natural way in this market and the economy. So for me, India is at a $2,000 per capita income. World over, जब $2,000 per capita income, whichever country cross, the incomes and the disposable incomes have gone up, and hence the consumption patterns have changed. So hence consumption is a very important theme going forward. I'm talking longer term, not near term. Similarly, financialization in the country is very, very important. More and more people are coming into the formal network, and more bank accounts are being opened, and there is more and more financial savings as well. Then for me, the next important pillar is on the digitization side. So both the technology as well as telecom side, they are the ones that are digitizing the whole economy, and they are bringing everybody from far-fetched areas also into the growth network. So this is an important pillar. And the fourth important pillar for me is healthcare. So these 3-4 pillars for me are the strongest pillars for investments going forward, and I'm focusing on them.
Perfect. So there is one last question which I think is interesting. Someone is asking that whether in US we can expect negative interest rates, until when can Fed continuously fund this liquidity, and this will continue because the interest rates are still already at almost negative. So what is your view on that?
Frankly, as the things stand right now, it seems that they want to keep interest rates lower for a longer period of time. It's a futile exercise to say whether it will be at zero point 0.7 or zero point 0.2 or minus zero point 0.5. That's very difficult. For investors, for us, the direction is more important. So the direction is it's that the central bankers are guiding. It looks like they want to keep it at a lower level for a prolonged period. But again, if there are inflation, etc., they cannot keep it low artificially when the inflation is high. So I think tracking those inflation numbers will give you a sense as to how the central bankers are likely to move. So as long as inflation is low and they want to keep interest rates low, they can do it. But they will find it difficult to keep interest rates low if the inflation is persistently high. So that would be a lead indicator.
Perfect. So I think, sir, we have taken a lot of questions, and you have answered them perfectly. There's still a lot of questions, but of course, due to lack of time, because it's already 10:30 on a Sunday night, so we cannot continue forever. But first of all, thank you so much for sharing some great insights, for some great data, some such a beautiful method which one can follow in terms of fundamentals as well as technicals to at least not lose money and then make money in the markets, which is very important. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to host you, and you were an amazing speaker to everyone. That's currently seen by the feedbacks you have got. So, sir, some closing words before we close off.
I would only say that, as I've been highlighting, that we have so much of experiences of others. We have so much of wealth of those experiences. Take lessons from them and ensure that we are sticking to our plan. And if you have a plan, ensure that you are sticking to that plan. Invest in fundamentally and technically strong companies. You are bound to make money.
True, sir. True. So thank you so much, sir, for giving your time, for giving your time for sharing such a beautiful presentation, which was so easy to understand for even a small retailer. And you understood that, of course, the way you were presenting, आपने जो एक technical term को भी इतने अच्छे तरीके से समझाया ताकि सब समझ सके. That was amazing. And we look forward to host you once again, maybe next month or next month whenever you're free. So thank you so much for giving your time from a busy schedule. And I hope today we all learned something great, which you can definitely work on. You can become a self-dependent investor or trader. That's our motive. कि आप किसी के पास अब dependent नहीं हो, आप किसी के ऊपर dependent नहीं हो. You can become self-dependent trader and investor by watching these webinars, which we do every Sunday, so that you move through that and you don't have to ask anyone else कि कौन सा stock buy करूँ, कौन सा stock sell करूँ. You can do your own homework. Of course, उसके लिए आपको थोड़ा मेहनत करना पड़ेगा. Nothing comes easy. You have to work hard. You have to research. But sir has already told you the ways. We have other great speakers who have come, and we have been uploading those videos on YouTube so that you can watch it anytime which you want, because that is very, very important. So if you want, you can go to our channel and you can see all the videos which we have uploaded. And these webinars, again, we do try to do it every Sunday, where we bring speakers like Alok sir, who share some great insights in such a simple language ताकि सबको समझ में आए. That is our motive. And that's why I tell all the speakers, sir, आप उस तरीके से समझाओ ताकि एक novice भी समझ पाए. And it was some amazing learning today. And the same way we'll meet you next week with another great speaker. We'll be sharing some great insights on market. Okay. Till then, of course, take care of yourself. We are there in tough times, but of course, good times are coming soon. I can ensure that. And of course, be at home. Try to be at home. Take care of yourself. Sanitize your belongings. Okay. Till then, of course, good night. Take care. Stay safe. And don't forget to join our knowledge groups, which are 3 groups where we share a lot of data, insights, and about regular updates on market. And of course, as I told you, we upload everything on our channels so that you get those webinars once again, and you can watch them again and again. Soon this one will also be uploaded, and of course, stay updated with it. And thank you so much once again for joining, for being there on a Sunday night. Till night, till 10:40 p.m. We have more than 50 people on Zoom, and we had more than 70 to 80 people watching us on Facebook. So that's great. That's keep sharing blessings with us, because that is very important to keep sharing your feedbacks, how we can improve, or some speaker if you want particularly, we'll try to bring him. Okay, so that is our main motive. So once again, good night everyone. Stay safe, and see you all next Sunday with an exciting webinar. Bye bye.
Thank you.